There's an experiment that I try with young boys and girls. I frequently ask them, who is the best human being that you know has walked this earth? And you get all sorts of names. You'll get Muhammad, you'll get Jesus Christ, you'll get Gandhi. And then I ask them, who's the worst person who's ever walked this earth? You get even more names. You'll get Bin Laden, you'll get Hitler, depending on the age of the person you're talking to. You'll get Judas, you'll get Saddam Hussein, and I could go on and on and on, the names that come. But the names don't matter to me as much as the next question that I ask. And that next question is, okay, so let's take the good ones. Let's take Gandhi, for example, or Jesus, or Muhammad. Did they have any people who didn't like them, who hated them? And the answer you get from really young children, 6, 7, 8 years old, is yes. And then you ask them about the bad people. Did they have anybody who swore by everything they did? Yes. So the point, the moral of that story, is that no matter how good you are, no matter how bad you are, you will always have people who talk about you in adverse ways. And so if your existence depends on whether people are saying good things about you, you're running around in a circle that will never end. Do the right thing. People will respect you. It's actually better than whether they like you. So don't let fear of being criticized stop you from doing the right thing. Do the right thing. Contend with wrong things. Contend with evil things. Yes, you may get chased away, as I was from the Ghana Olympic Committee. People basically said, even when he delegates work to you, he's always micromanaging. Well, I guess we could debate on what micromanaging is. But if I give you work that is supposed to be for our country, and I see tendencies that are not quite in line with the for our country part, I will keep an eye on what you are doing. It is my responsibility to do so if I'm the president of the organization. So after 5 years, they managed to convince the electorate that I wasn't the right person, and they voted me out. Less than 1 year later, all you have to do is go onto Google and type Gold Coast visa fraud, and you will see the embarrassment that the whole country of Ghana had to bear at the Commonwealth Games in 2018 because of visa fraud, because 70 or more so-called journalists arrived at the Australian border, some with one-way tickets, many without the tools of the journalism trade, and they were all turned back, and it turned into a really big disgrace that we still haven't lived down in Ghana. But for the 5 years that we were in charge of the Ghana Olympic Committee, we superintended over 2 Olympic Games, Rio and London, over the Glasgow Commonwealth Games. Nothing like this happened. And it's about making sure that we do the right thing. Why should we do the right thing if we're not even interested in the outcomes? At the very least, selfishly, you have to do it for your reputation. Unfortunately, this is something that people don't realize until it's too late. And by then, it's very costly. And I'd be okay if your misbehavior cost just you your reputation. But typically, what we see is that the adverse effects of your misbehavior impact not just you. They affect your mother and your father. People talk about them when they step out of the car in the shopping mall. People start pointing to them and say, oh, that's what it is. Who? Haven't you heard? It affects your children when they go to school. And no, children can be cruel when they're teasing each other. It affects your grandparents. Unfortunately, by the time this hits, it's too late to do anything about it because you've already been found out. And so whenever I've had the opportunity to speak to graduates at the university, I remind them of the University of Ghana's motto, Integri Proceedamos. And I remind them to walk in integrity, to proceed in integrity. And then I tell them, because it's the best gift they can give to themselves. Again, if you misbehave and you get found out, it's too late and you can't do anything about it. Unfortunately, there are a lot of leaders on our continent, heads of state even, who wish they could go back and change the legacy that people have of them. So that legacy is the same reputational thing. But the minute you leave office, there's no way you can affect it. And so it's something that we need to do while we're in office. We have to behave properly while we're in office. Otherwise, we will pay the price. And unfortunately, all of the people around us will also pay the price. And it is doable. And even as I say that, I'm going to mention names like Mandela, like Kofi Annan, and we'll eulogize them. But it is doable at the individual level by you and I. Those names I mentioned are role models. They are the role models we should all hold dear. Your legacy calls for you to do the right thing while you are in the seat. Whether as a president, a minister, an MP, a director, an officer, a manager, a secretary, a driver, a cleaner, do the right thing. Every day we read examples of, I think 2 days ago it was this young woman who was decorated by President Buhari in Nigeria because she found tens of thousands of I can't remember which currency, and she returned it. Do the right things will happen to you. So I've named all these jobs that I did. Good professional jobs. But I'll also tell you that I've worked in the fishing industry in Alaska before. Processing fish. Working 18-hour days. 7 days a week. And we used to pray sometimes that the fish flow would stop, so we wouldn't have to be out on the deck processing fish. And sometimes the fish flow would stop because the fish were migrating, and sometimes they get to a mouth of a river, and instead of continuing, they would turn in, and the fishermen would lose them for a day or a day and a half or 2 days. And for those 2 days, the luxury of sleep was beautiful. But then by the second morning, you realize, I'm not earning any money because I'm not processing fish. And then we start praying for the fish to return. But the point I'm trying to make is that, yes, we've done those menial jobs also. And even in those menial jobs, you have the opportunity to stand tall and do the right thing. In terms of clocking hours, in terms of showing up for work, in terms of working diligently when you're at work. I think it's an issue of mentality and of culture than it is of the kind of profession or occupation that you're in. And I tell people that when you work in the kind of job that I just described in the fishing industry, you learn how to value money because it's really hard to earn that money. And it is at that point that I realized that my God made me, at the same time, a socialist and a capitalist. And there's no inconsistency. What do I mean? When I earn my own money working 18 hours a day, 7 days a week, and it is my money, I should have the luxury to spend it on whatever I want to. That's the capitalist bit of me. On the other hand, when people put a community's money into my hands, whether it's as president of the Ghana Olympic Committee or it's as Pro-Vice-Chancellor for research, when those communal funds get into your hands, by definition, you have to think as a socialist would. Equity has to be one of the first things on your mind. You have to be careful about how you use the money. You have to be introspective in ways that you don't have to be when it's your own money. And the issue of equity is central to the conversation that we're having today about making sure you do the right thing. So, there's no contradiction, depending on where the money comes from. It inclines me either as a capitalist or as a socialist. And I don't think it's schizophrenic at all, because I'm very clear on when I should be which. And it inclines me to be introspective, to be judicious about seeking value for money, much more than if the money was just mine. About valuing the resources that I hold in trust for a community. And about treating the money properly, treating it as though as in the ways that I would treat my own money. I'm not saying spending the money, but handling it properly. Dare to think and plan boldly, because we must grow well for future generations. But again, when you represent community, you don't just run off on harebrained schemes. Again, you ask yourself, if it was your money, would you have invested it in that high interest yielding investment without vetting the sustainability of that fund? In the last year or so, we've seen many people at our university who've taken departmental funds and invested them in organizations that have now gone under. And then the question arises, how do we reclaim that money? And the point again is, if it had been their own money, they would have asked a few more questions before they invested those monies. We have to think about the future generations, because those monies that have gone will now not serve today's students or tomorrow's students. These are our children and our grandchildren that I talked about. Additionally, at work, we have to show our colleagues, the ones we work with or the ones who work under us, that we, those who lead, are not there simply for the big position, simply for the perks of the job. When I was at the African Population and Health Research Center, Dr. Zulu can confirm, I drove the smallest car in the office's fleet.